Secret number two is one of my top faves. I talk about this on Vox Verba's Instagram account all the time.
Uh-huh.
And any professional writer knows this secret. And also, any qualitative scientist knows this secret because it's so difficult to find. So, okay. And also, anyone who knows multiple languages might know this.
Okay.
It's idioms.
Hi guys, welcome back to the EcomXFactor podcast. Today's guest is Andrya Allen. Andrea is the founder of Vox Verba, an AI-based solution that transforms your customers' own words into sales copy. We talked about many different interesting topics today, especially in regards to branding and connecting with your customers and really understanding who is your customer and how to generate great copy and content that actually makes a connection with your customer and makes them trust you and later on also buy from you. We spoke about how to use customer reviews to generate great copy, how to be more customer-centric, how using idioms can boost your conversion rates, and much more. I hope you enjoyed this talk at least as much as I did. I'm sure it's going to be very valuable for you guys.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Andrea, how are you?
I'm good. Hello. How are you?
I'm great. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes. Yes.
We just spoke about this 2 seconds ago, but it still doesn't mean that I will pronounce your name correctly. So I'm glad I did.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, and we talked a bit before going live, and I'm really thrilled to have this talk because I'm sure it's going to be to go to interesting places. But before we dive deeper into what we're planning to talk today, can you share a bit about your background story?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I am currently in Pensacola, Florida, and I came here for college. I was recruited for a speech and debate team. Really, at that time in my life, I thought that I would be a professor and I would help people tell stories through speech. I went through the master's program here and I really started studying qualitative science and narrative and storytelling. And I fell in love with it. But I also realized that in that field, I didn't have the ability to earn the kind of money that I wanted to. So I was like, I need to start an agency. So I did that. I started an agency. Before I started my own agency, I went into the branding world and worked at another agency for a while, and then started my own agency. And my agency was doing really well. We focused on communications and content. And it was right around 2012 when kind of social media ads and Facebook ads had first started. And I was making brand voice based content at really high capacity. I was doing about 1,500 posts a month when I had to start developing these systems because it was too much.
Did you do this like manually? How did you do this?
Yeah, I did it manually, but using systems so I could create things really quickly. So I would use kind of copy systems and rules for stock photography, and just kind of churn it out really quickly. But it became exhaustive and it didn't perform at the level that it needed to. So, social media stuff started dropping and engagement rates, organic rates started dropping, and people just weren't interacting with business content on social media. So to solve that, I started interviewing customers so that I could tell their stories in their words and kind of bring social aspects back to social media content. And it blew up. It just started working so well. The brands that I managed went from, maybe 3,000 followers back then really quickly to around 300,000. And from there, our agency just kind of blew up. We started managing millions in advertising, and this became a huge demand of getting customer stories and then turning them into content. Over several years, I wanted to automate that system after I proved it. And COVID kind of gave me the perfect opportunity to do that, stuck at home. And so I took my system and I automated it. And I tested pieces with some of my closest friends and clients like Funded Today, Snow Teeth Whitening, Pilot House, and all of them loved it. We're kind of blown away that this could be automated. So that's kind of the story. And we launched that in July of 2020 with Vox Verba. So now we're at VoxVerba.com. We give automated brand data insights based on customer voice to typically e-commerce brands, although we do many different types of brands. And it really all started with qualitative research.
Nice. Awesome. I love the story. I love the automation aspect. So we'll dive into this in a moment. But can you please elaborate? Let's say I'm an e-commerce store owner and I come to Vox Verba. So how does the onboarding process look like? And what should I expect within like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? What do you normally see?
Yeah. So the first step, my goal with Vox Verba was to take the process that I had, which was really manual and intensive and honestly really expensive. A brand engagement where you manually interview all of your customers ours start at $15,000 for my agency. So it's expensive. And I wanted Vox Verba to use automation to get the minimum viable product to make it the most accessible to like every Shopify owner out there. Like if you have a dream and an idea and a vision and you can get a brand going, I wanted you to be able to buy this. So I found a way for only $100. Someone can just go on the website, purchase the Voice of Customer guide for $100, and then submit any of their customer voice data to us. So you'll get an email and the email will tell you how to do that. Most of the time, people can export product reviews from their e-commerce store. Sometimes you need some data scraping help. We can help with that. Sometimes you need to hire a VA and manually do it. And that's difficult and can cost some money, but the return is huge. So don't let that be a barrier. And I highly advise that if you already don't have access to that, that is just a missing key in your business. Like that is step one. So contact me and I'll help you with that.
For free.
Yeah, it's just so important. It's so important. So you'll get that email. The email will tell you how to submit your data. And then as soon as we get your data, we start processing your information. And within 3 days, you get your report. After you get your report, it's up to you to implement it. We also offer some implementation of that to support people, some copywriting or consulting, kind of depending on what you need. But most people, when they implement it immediately, will see an immediate result. So people will take a line and use it in their email subject line and then immediately see people have reported back double engagement rates. You can take the brand traits and immediately put them in product descriptions and see an increase in your conversion rates like that. And it happens every time, so I can say it really confidently. It sounds kind of unbelievable, but it just works. Your customers feel seen and heard, and that's why it works. Who it doesn't work for is if you've just imported reviews from AliExpress.
For sure.
That's not going to work. It's not going to work for you. Who it doesn't work for is when people contact me and ask if they can scrape reviews from another brand. Like that's not going to work for you.
Okay, and it's very interesting. But can you share a bit about how does the process look like behind the curtains? Like, what is the algorithm looking for? Any commonalities that you see in between, like different stores, stuff like that?
Yeah. So I took what my process was and then found a way to make machine learning and kind of database and script analysis look for what I manually looked for. And then once I taught systems how to do this, it's able to replicate what I do. So I'll explain a little bit of how that works. So you kind of understand the underpinnings of it. And then I'll talk about the specific things that we look for. Cool. So Qualitative data analysis has a few different things you can do, but basically you go line by line and you assign a theme, or you look for a signal. And that signal typically has a theme associated with it. So VoxVerba looks for the themes that I know are very reliable and powerful for brands, like positive psychology, like strengths, like sensory descriptors, things that are known to be very powerful language, which would include things like idioms, traits, descriptions, and then we match all of that with archetype signals. So what's if a customer tells a story about how much they love a coffee, they're like, oh, I love this coffee. It makes my morning so beautiful. I take it onto the porch and then I just have a ceremony with myself. That is a summary of a real key message.
Sure.
And that's the lover archetype. You can just kind of hear it. And so I've taught our systems how to do that.
Okay, and then you're going to suggest to the e-commerce store owner, like the lines, is it going to be ranked or is it going to be divided into different archetypes? So how is the report handed out?
Yeah. So the structure of the report starts with key messages. I start there because that's really the grounding place of a brand, or what are the key things that your customers are talking about. And from there, it goes into traits. So after your key messages, what are the dominant, most important traits and characteristics of your brand? And then from there, it goes into storylines. And for each of these, you're getting 10. The 10 are not ranked 1 through 10. They're all 10, just the most powerful that rised up. So you get 10 of each of these. You get your storylines. These are all story focused or things that can inspire a story for your brand. And then at the second portion of the report, you get an archetype analysis. So what we do is we say, we found 1,000 total signals in your data set. And out of that 1,000 signals, 300 of them were the magician archetype. So you're 30% magician. So we'll give you the top 3 of those, and then we'll give you 10 messages for each of those. So we'll give you 10 examples of the magician archetype in copy and positioning from your customer's voice.
And these examples are curated by the system, or just examples that are quoted from the data that the customer handed out?
So the system signals it. And then for every single report, after the system signals all of this stuff and tells us what your information is, manually, we have professional copywriters and qualitative scientists on the team that look at it and then change it into a strong, usable sentence.
Nice. This is great. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And the copywriters also write the story. You mentioned the storyline. So they also
don't write the story, but they will edit the story so that it is usable. So it's kind of like if you're a journalist and you do an interview with someone, and so on your notepad you have their exact quote, but you also have some things that are kind of paraphrased. Our job is to keep the integrity of what the person interviewed or the person speaking said, but to put it in a way that could be digested almost like in a newspaper, but in this case for a business.
And can you share like examples of the reactions of store owners when they receive this? Are they surprised by the signals? Are they shocked? It seems like this is what they expected.
We get all different kinds of responses. So sometimes people say, wow, I feel everyone says wow almost. Often people are very surprised. They don't fully understand how it's able to be so spot on, so just right. So one company, this is a multi-million-dollar food-based e-commerce subscription brand, and they have invested a lot in branding and have had a hard time, to be honest. They haven't had the best of times with their branding agencies that they've worked with, and they even had a partnership with Facebook where Facebook was able to give them some insights on their customers. And what they found was that the branding agency recommended this type of persona that was totally off from the data. And so when they got the data from us, they were like, whoa, this validates what we saw from when Facebook consulted us, which that was a really early win for us, for Vox Verba. We were like, wow, that's some huge validation. Other ones say things like, I've never felt so seen or empowered or such clarity. Other people have responded back and said that the report ignited their marketing team by making people kind of argue.
Okay.
Which is good. You should be passionate about this stuff.
For sure.
It means you need to make some decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, the responses are overwhelmingly positive. There have been a few times where I think that the brand just really needs some significant work. And so a lot of times people want to further understand what this could mean. How do we get more of this? One person that we work with, Molly Mahoney, she teaches people how to do live video, how to go live for your brand. Maybe it's live selling or things like that. And she got a report from us, and she has this special framework that she uses called a quesadilla of awesome.
Okay.
And her customers said it so often that it ended up in her report. That's how you know you have a strong brand.
Yeah.
So it can measure things like that.
Amazing. And is there like a specific threshold, like the minimum amount of data that this is going to be viable? I mean, I'm a store owner. I'm just beginning. When should I approach you guys?
Yeah. So for the customer review data, kind of the minimum that we've seen work is around 30. And that's making sure that those are 30 pretty rich customer reviews, at least a real sentence long as an absolute minimum. And it's important to keep in mind that this is science, guys. So the more data points you have, the higher confidence ratio, the more valid your data is. So if you have 30 data points, you're going to get some very meaningful data that you can use immediately, but it might be 60 to 80% off.
Yeah.
If you have 5,000 data points, you might be 85 to 95% confident that this is exactly what your customer sounds like. If you have 25,000 data points, you can be 99% sure this is your customer.
Cool.
So there's a variance. And a lot of people come to us before they even have customer reviews. We have a service called the Founder Voice Interview, where we actually walk you through an interview that helps uncover your brand so that you can start that first level of branding before you have the customer reviews.
Interesting. And does the report also give like negative feedback? Let's say a lot of customers complain about something. Does this stuff rise up as well in the report?
No, it doesn't. People ask us for this often. People also ask us for reports about the problems and frustrations that customers have. Those are some common requests that I get. This is why I don't do it. I'm pretty blunt about it. First of all, in my branding business, I am not the kind of consultant, I'm not the kind of marketer that solves business problems. I focus on business opportunities. Typically, by focusing on an opportunity, you can see the solution to a problem. And most times, the solution to a problem is very root-based or systematic. And it can also create fear-based marketing, which I think is unethical and unhealthy. So I disagree with all of that. And so I don't do it.
Nice.
The second reason is we use AI. We have a partnership with GPT-3 and OpenAI, and AI is really powerful and incredible. And I really believe that AI is going to be a miracle for humanity. It's going to progress what we can do. It's going to free up and empower creatives and high-level workers. But it has some huge problems right now. The first problem is that it's grew up on Reddit and Wikipedia, which is like the most negative, racist, misogynistic thing you could possibly be trained on. And because of that, and because of the very challenging reputations of marketing consultants and manipulation through marketing methods and things like data privacy problems, I could go on and on. Vox Verba is positive psychology based. We only look for strengths and positive signals, and Vox Verba will never produce a negative based report. So if someone wants to build that company, they can.
There's an opportunity for you. You said you're focused on opportunities, so this is
exactly. Yeah. And someone I think, could maybe do that really well. I just believe very strongly that we have to be positive stewards of what we put out in the world. And that is my best solution for how I can do that in the advertising and marketing world.
That's great. And it's also very important because, I see a lot of fear-based and negativity-based persuasion techniques. I think they used to work better in the past, but now hopefully customers are already getting used to this, and they are developing a much more suspicious perception of this. But still, there are a lot of players still doing this, and it's great that you guys just say that you're not involved in this. So I love that fact. Can you share a bit like best practices or secrets or stuff that you see that like produce really great results for your customers based on like branding best practices or secrets?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I love branding so much. Okay, branding is so powerful for e-commerce brands. First of all, it's the age of e-commerce brands. So anyone who's listening to this, like, now is your time, guys. But to be successful, you have to have a really great brand. And I don't mean that in like some weird Mad Men sense of the word. I really believe that brands are like people, and that when you first build a brand, it's kind of like you just had a baby. Like it only has your life. It only feeds when it only gets food when you feed it. And it doesn't know anything that you don't teach it. So you have to do that. And then eventually it starts to be exposed to the world, and it develops its own personality, meets friends. Those friends inform the child's personality. And so that's kind of my vision of how brands grow. So the best thing you can do as a brand is to listen very carefully to yourself and your environment. In many ways, it's about being mindful of your strengths, having awareness, and not being humble about what good you can do, how you're different. And if you don't know the answers to that, to find a way to navigate that, you might have to spend some real time asking some hard questions. And VoxVerba can help you. We have content on that. There's consistent questions that can give you answers, and easy ones are like a core values exercise would be something you could just Google and do in 10 minutes. Yeah. You might find out that your number one value is freedom. So if your number one value is freedom, put it all up in your e-com brand in some way. Find a way to do that, because you'll feel passionate, motivated, and you'll speak to an audience. Now, there's much more strategic and high-level ways to do that than to do just a core value exercise, but that's an accessible beginner's example.
Great.
So one, I'll give you kind of 5 things that people can do for really great tips. But before I give these tactical things, I just want to say that the best thing you can do to be a brand is to really listen to yourself and to listen to your customers very deeply and hear what feels powerful. It can be that simple, just what rises to the top, and then differentiate your brand based on that, because it's likely that's going to be emotion based. So starting there.
Just a sec, before you begin, can you elaborate about this? Because I think it's important. What do you mean by saying powerful? How do you define powerful? Because it can be...
I say powerful because it's broad. Yeah. I say it because it's about a feeling that can... it's so hard to describe. It's kind of intuitive. And when I say powerful, I just mean that it stands on its own. So you listen and then you process, and then something's going to stand after that. It's, if you've ever gone through like a meditative process, if you've ever read a book and then, or a great blog post, and then gone for a walk, after that walk, you're usually thinking about like one or two things that stood up for you.
Yeah.
That thing that stands up has power. And it's hard for me to define power for you, because power is like unconscious and emotional and really probably archetype based. But that, might challenge a lot of people's beliefs and stuff. So I don't know. but it's really about kind of this internal emotional connection. And it comes often intuitively from the mind after kind of going to a quiet place after processing something. So usually when people get these reports, you'll read the report and then take some space, and about 20% of it will rise to the top. And that is how you should brand yourself. That is your brand. So an example would be Mia Stilo. Mia Stilo is the brand that I manage out of the Netherlands. It's a maternity fashion brand, and we do fashion for photo shoots. And when you analyze the voice of the customer, they're photographers, but they're a specific kind of photographer. They're photographers that like to make perfect, dreamy, magical photo shoots. And that's why they're buying our outfits. So that resonates to the top. That informs everything in Mia Stilo's brand. So if you look at our Instagram, or you look at, if you sign up for our email newsletter, and you look at our subject headlines, and sometimes even our promotions, our product descriptions, you'll see dreamy, perfect, stunning, gorgeous, fairy tale. This is just a mixture of those three archetypes traits.
Cool.
So that, I hope that gives like a...
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So sorry for interrupting.
No, that was great. Yeah, as helpful as I can be, So let's see, I'll give you five secrets for kind of positioning and copywriting. So the first one I came upon, I'm a big masterclass lover. I don't know if you've ever used masterclass.
Sure. Yeah. I did the Chris Voss. That's
it. That's what I'm about to talk about. Okay. So Chris Voss has this section on tactical empathy, right?
Yeah.
That's what Vox Verba does. So he has a portion in there where he talks about labels and mirroring. Okay, so labels are just themes. So Vox Verba is finding these labels for you. And then mirroring is what you do when you have this report, your customer's language, and then you put it back out in the world. So I'll kind of unpack that for people that haven't watched it. So Chris Voss has a masterclass. I think it's called it's a masterclass on sales and negotiation, I think.
The art of negotiation, maybe? It's
art of negotiation,
it's something like that. Negotiation, something.
In it, he talks about his tactical empathy method. And the tactical empathy method is basically that sales is grounded in empathy. And so in order to have successful sales, you have to collaborate through listening. And when you listen, you should listen first for labels, is what he calls it. Labels are things that they self-identify with. So they might say, I'm a very spiritual person. And so Chris Voss would say in the tactical empathy method, you would apply the label, maybe spiritual person or spirituality to that, and then use that in your conversation with them. That goes to his next step, mirroring, which is where you take the label or you take exactly what they say and then you mirror it back to them. Mm-hmm. When you do this, they feel connected because they see themselves in you and they continue to share and continue to build on that relationship with you. So if carrying this spirituality example, if they say, I'm a spiritual person, and then you say, you're a spiritual person, then they go, yes, I love to go to the garden and say a prayer, or I love to travel and visit sacred temples. Mm-hmm. And then you could, start to have conversations about this person being a spiritual traveler. So that's labels plus mirroring. It can get very high level. Uh-huh. So what I said is just a teeny little kind of elementary, like a peacock that parrot that just mirrors back. Yeah. Uh-huh. But you can do it in a very subtle, expert way that has incredible results.
So for example, one could put this in the product page in the copy as a headline. Let's say I got a few reviews that surfaced up or signals that surfaced up in the report. I can just use the tone of voice of the customer and put it in the product page as if it was a real conversation. This is what you're saying, basically.
Exactly. That's exactly how you do it, because it is a real conversation. Sure. Mm-hmm. Your customer bought from you, you sent them something. This is like it's like a special gift. Now you have a relationship. And then they came back to you and they said that they love it. I mean, basically at this point, you're supposed to like slide in the DMs or text them, right? Mm-hmm. But instead you're going to make an ad. So
but you can use this in the remarketing ad, this option of
absolutely. Yes. So use it in remarketing ads, in email subject lines, product descriptions. Mm-hmm. That is tactical empathy and mirroring. So that's secret number one.
Nice.
Secret number two is one of my top faves. I talk about this on Vox Verba's Instagram account all the time. Uh-huh. And any professional writer knows this secret. And also any qualitative scientist knows this secret because it's so difficult to find. So, okay. And also anyone who knows multiple languages might know this.
Okay.
It's idioms. Do you know what idioms are? Have you ever heard of idioms?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So some people don't know what idioms are. Mm-hmm. Usually if you know more than one language, you know what an idiom is, because idioms quickly become known as the most difficult to translate phrases that exist. But really they're special cultural phrases, almost jargon, but like jargon for a subculture. Mm-hmm. So examples of an idiom might be on the other hand. So on the other hand, you might want to do this, you're not actually talking about a hand, you're just talking about the other side of something. So that's an idiom. Another idiom, I'm going to really mess this one up. I'm not even going to try to say it, but there's a French idiom that one of my good friends tried to tell me, and it's something about pushing a grandmother into a nettle. It's like, don't push granny into the nettle. And I think it basically means don't make a fuss of things.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay.
So you're looking for little phrases like that.
Nice.
Things that don't translate well. Now that's kind of the opposite of typical marketing or copywriting advice. You'll hear people out there say, oh, make sure that everything you say can be easily translated and read by a first grade reader. Mm-hmm. You want your copywriting to be accessible and simple and clear and brief, but it still needs to feel special and cultural. So don't take the life out of it. Anytime you can find an idiom, put it in an ad. I swear to you, it will be the best ad you've ever run. So idioms are so powerful, mostly because people are just like, what are they saying? If they don't understand it, they're like, what is this? So either they resonate with it or it piques their interest. Either way, you win. So that's number 2.
Amazing. I just want to pause you for a sec. It's important to notice that you must be very cautious with idioms and you must localize. So, for example, idioms that are used in the UK might not work necessarily in the US. So if you're targeting tier 1 countries, English speaking countries, you should be mindful of this. And if you're localizing to a foreign language, this is why you need to hire a translator that actually lives in the country. Because, for example, I translated one page to German, but I found a Hungarian translator which spoke German. But then I gave it for proofreading to a German translator, and he was shocked. He said, "This isn't German. It's somebody not German translated it." So I realized it was a mistake giving it to a Hungarian woman that knew German, but if you're not a native speaker, it makes a huge difference. So
it's so important. Localizing content, segmenting as much as possible will give you the best results, especially with copywriting.
I agree.
And you don't want to embarrass yourself if something translates very poorly.
For sure.
Oh boy. Let's see. The third secret we've talked about a bit, it's archetypes. Writing in archetypes, it is transformative. So brand archetypes were originally created archetypes themselves were created by Carl Jung. But then a personal leadership psychologist and a brand marketer in the 80s transformed them into brand archetypes. So they're based on Carl Jung, but then Margaret Mead and Carol Pearson kind of gave us the Bible of them in the book, The Hero and the Outlaw. Since Mad Men days, agencies, especially branding agencies, have been using brand archetypes. Often in either a intuitive or kind of creative genius way, but sometimes in a very Joe just got your account and Joe just got taught the brand archetypes way. So it's a mixture. But the brand archetypes are powerful. That's why these agencies use them. But you can get it wrong, and it can stifle the growth of your company if it's not customer-led. So we know today in e-commerce that the best brands are customer-led or customer-driven brands because they can kind of ride the wave of innovation faster than everyone else while also converting those early adopters into mass markets. So if you want to become a real unicorn brand, maybe your goal is to go public, maybe your goal is to just become, $1 billion brand. If you have these really aggressive goals, you want to be an incredible brand, then you need to be customer-led. So that means your archetypes need to be customer-led. You need to look at your customer data to figure out what your brand archetypes are. Now, you can also have your founder who's driving the vision, moving the company forward. You can have some of theirs or your leadership team in that voice as well. There's some flexibility, but dominantly it needs to be customer-led. So listen to your customers, pour over your customer reviews, see what kind of archetype language, what kind of archetype symbols are in there. And some examples of archetypes are in Vox Verba system, our number one archetype that most of our customers, I think over 30% of our customers, get ranked as the sage archetype. So that's huge. The sage archetype is really about finding fulfillment through wisdom, gaining independence through learning. They're about insights. They're about resources. And it makes sense because we sell insights. So people who are insightful look for us. Yeah. So that's kind of how archetypes work. The second one, this is not our second most popular one, but it's a very clear example, is the magician archetype. The magician archetype is about power, but really about power kind of spiritually, kind of an internal power or a foundational or alchemic level power, versus the ruler archetype, which is about kind of systematic or organizational ruling power. So the magician archetype is about spiritual power, which we talk about archetypes, which are kind of spirituality based in some ways. They're emotional. Mm-hmm. So since we talk about this, and VoxVerba is partly the magician archetype, we are overwhelmingly, people are attracted to us when they are into alternative things. So they might be actual magician people, actual magic-based people, religious people, spirituality-based e-commerce brands. That's why the coffee ceremony example, amazing. So when you when you live in this archetype and you embody the archetype, the people that come to you are that archetype. It's very clear. It happens very quickly. And you're using these phrases like, elementary example would be if you're a sage brand, then you might use the word smart or expert. So if you use that in your ad, then Facebook helps you out by targeting people who like to follow or are talking about or talking with experts or smart people. So that's kind of on a fundamental level how the copywriting and brand positioning through archetypes can support your advertising. But it also increases your brand's value, your customer lifetime value, and your average order value, because you're so consistent and you're so differentiated that you're able to sell more.
This interesting point. Important point.
It's amazing. Yeah. So that's archetypes. That's tip number 3.
I have a question. All the archetypes seem to me like very male dominant. Is it correct to say, do you agree, or I'm not getting it right?
I did mention ones that might feel male oriented, but also Carl Jung, male. Yeah. Now the Margaret Mark and Carol Pearson, both female, but there are feminine leaning archetypes, like the lover or caregiver. But I also would say that it's difficult to have kind of a feminine or masculine or a gender-based conversation around some of these things because they're so values-based. So in some cultures, you may find, and even the AI might say something like smart or expert. The AI actually prefers to use male pronouns when talking about smart and expert. But when you talk about perfect and beautiful, the AI uses female pronouns. So it's very interesting, but I would say that there are masculine and feminine sides of both. Carl Jung had a lot of duality, but also to be wary of the tendency sometimes in branding to assign gender. Although in some of the brands I manage, in Mi Estilo, we personify the female. So when in our product descriptions, we actually use she for our dresses. And that's a brand choice that we made.
Nice. Interesting.
Yeah.
What other choices did you make regarding the brand? This is a very interesting point to personify the dress. But do you have any other examples that come to mind?
All the time. Okay, so here's an example. Let me see if I can remember this correctly. Someone said something like in a customer review, they said, I take this dress to the beach and to the forest, and it's perfect in golden hour in both, because they're photographers, right? So I go to the beach and the forest, it's perfect in golden hour in both. So in the product description, we'll say, the boho Paris dress loves photo shoot dates at the beach, and she loves to go to the forest. So we really turn her into a person that has these attributes of what the photographer is.
And for example, for this, did the customer did a split test and told you what were the results before and after the changes were made, or do customers like update you on split test and changes they made, or they just come to you very like amazed and give you like great feedbacks?
Yeah, I'm not hearing a lot of feedback from split tests. I think a lot of marketers talk about split tests, but don't do them.
That's a problem.
What I do hear is kind of before and after results very frequently. So before one e-commerce brand, before using any of the customer voice insights or brand language, before and after, they saw an increase in revenue over 30 days. So they changed all their SOPs, every email that went out, every product description, even changed their product names so that the product name was based in an archetype. So the example would be instead of just a shirt, it would be the flirty shirt, right? So it'd be a lover archetype. So they took their insights and then over 90 days, they embedded it across every single thing. After that, they had 1,000% increase in their revenue.
Wow, amazing.
Crazy. Nice. Now, when I did this with Mia Stilo, it took 2.5 years for these results. But when I first started, the company was only making around $15,000 a month. Now the company is a multi-million-dollar company with presence all over the US and Europe. So, and a lot, it comes from some very detail-based things, making sure you have your segmentation and things like that, right? But at the most basic level, it's about that brand differentiation. So the average order value when I first started with Mia Stilo was about €150. Now the average order value is around 280.
Wow.
That can change a company.
For sure. And amazing. And we talked a lot about like branding aspects, and what about some example from the checkout or cart? Like where can I take the brand voice and the archetypes and implement them in the checkout, for example?
Yeah, I actually don't do a lot of that because most of my business is in Shopify. So and you have very limited cart checkouts.
Yeah.
But I would say overall that any opportunity to include a engaging brand voice would be a positive opportunity. And especially in the follow-ups, that first after order email should be very either personal. If you're not a personal brand, then it should just be highly brand emotional.
I see.
Yeah.
Cool. So can we go back to the 2 remaining secrets?
Yeah. So we got number three, which is archetypes. The next one's storytelling. We kind of dipped into that with the story of embodying the archetype that she likes to go to the beach.
By the way, you're a great storyteller. Like in the second point, you got my curiosity level like really high, because you said nobody uses this, many overlook this, and I was okay. What is he talking about? What is it?
Storytelling, I think, is the most. Okay, so storytelling's number 4. I think it's one of the most talked about things in marketing and branding. Also one of the least well understood, and I think people do it in a very shallow way. Sorry guys, I just want everyone to go a little deeper with their stories. Be a little more human, so and a little less awkward. Okay, so this is what I mean. Don't be a salesy weirdo, be a real person. So if you're going to make a social media post, would you walk into a party and say this? If you wouldn't, then it might not be a great story for a social media post. If you're sitting at a dinner table, would you start telling this story? If the answer is no, then it's probably not a great Facebook ad story or a great email story. So it needs to be conversational, as in I would have a real conversation. The best way to tap into that is to picture a real person and have a real conversation with them. Now, my best conversations I have with my business partner and best friend, Lena. So most of the time when I'm writing to some variant of Lena.
Nice.
You can do whatever you want. You can write to whoever you want that feels the most comfortable, but pick a person and write to them and tell a story to them. If you would tell that story to them and you read it out loud and it sounds right, that content is going to really perform for you. So that is storytelling tip number one. Second one is don't be afraid to be personal and don't be afraid to be dynamic. So some brands are afraid these days of, oh, I have to sound only this way. And especially when you're talking about branding, people can become paralyzed. Oh, I can only tell a story that sounds like a lover. Don't let it paralyze you. Let it empower you. Go there to find inspiration, and then let the inspiration go where you go. Don't let the brand be a limiting container. Only let it be a platform to stand on. Nice. Yeah, so that's kind of my best advice for storytelling.
Great advice.
Yeah, thanks. I love stories. I just want better stories online, and then we'd all be happier people.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, I mean, picture a real person. A lot of people say this, but also I overlook this, even though I know it's very crucial and critical, but it's easy not to do this, but it is important. So it's great that you re-emphasize this.
Yeah. And, so I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also a writer. I have a poetry book that I published, and I write every single week with a group of writers. We do kind of memoir or creative writing. And I also am fully, all my free time, I'm taking writer workshops. It's just my passion. Nice. And every author, every writer of every great book you've ever read is talking to a specific person. If you ever think back to some of the best pieces you've ever read, they sound like they're talking to you. And that's because the writer themselves has thought of a real or imaginary person and is truly speaking to them. So it's kind of the most secret writer hack that everyone else should know. And I use it for all my personal social media posts. I use it for brand content, train all of our copywriters on this approach. And it just makes you a happier person because you can tell better stories.
Cool. And get better results.
That's right. Exactly. And then the last one, I think, as a writer, Hemingway would be pretty pissed about this. I don't know if I can say that word. I'm sorry.
No. Hemingway? You mean Hemingway?
Yeah, Hemingway would be so mad. Okay, so tip number 5 is adjectives. So a lot of copywriters will tell you not to use adjectives. Hemingway will tell you not to use adjectives. He uses a lot of them. So be careful what he tells you. But adjectives are a really powerful copywriting hack, if you will, because they're able to, if used correctly, transport you to a specific time, place, or feeling. And that alone is powerful. It also allows you to brand and differentiate in a quick and systematic way that can be taught, which is very important for a brand. So you have to have adjectives. So some writers will be like, cut the adjectives. Don't listen to them.
So can you give like examples?
Yeah. So back to like product descriptions. Cozy, the word cozy is an adjective. But the word cozy is also the name of a line of clothing for Skims. Skims is Kim Kardashian's loungewear and shapewear brand that I love. They are also doing a great job with their branding. So their branding is really dominantly the regular guy, which I call the regular gal or the homie. So Carl Jung called him the regular guy, but we know some negative misogynistic things about Carl Jung. So feel free to change that to the regular gal or the homie. And that's the Skims brand. So cozy is a regular guy word because it's about being comfortable. And that's the whole product line for them. And it's an adjective. Just because they call it the cozy brand means they can charge $80, 80 euro or whatever it is for a ribbed tank top. That's probably, costs $2 to produce. So use adjectives.
Interesting. It's funny that you mentioned cozy because me and my wife, I told you before, we're digital nomads. So we're traveling a lot, and whenever we choose an apartment from Airbnb, whenever we see the word cozy, we scroll, we move on because
small,
it's
right?
small. It means small. So we stay away from cozy apartments.
Right. That's such a good example of context too, right?
For sure.
So making sure that, cozy for clothes is totally different than cozy for a place to stay.
Yeah. So
That's
this is the bonus secret. Context matters.
Yeah. Context matters has been true for all 5.
For sure.
So that's 5. Let's see. The first one is tactical empathy or mirroring, which is from Chris Voss's method. The second one is using idioms. The third one is grounding yourself in archetypes. Fourth is storytelling. And the fifth is adjectives.
Awesome.
If you use all of these, especially if they're all customer-led initiatives, what our customers are saying is that this accelerates growth for them because they are able to use customer-based innovation to choose strategic initiatives, what tactics they're going to focus on, and what language they're going to use.
And this is awesome. And it made me think, because whenever we build a brand, we immediately think, okay, what are going to be the values of the brand? And you flip it the other way around and you say, okay, let's put a brand out there and see what are the values are going to be customer-centric, led by the customers. And I never thought about this way, but it makes a lot of sense. But I also can see cons to this because you might attract customers that you don't want. So what is your take about this?
Yes. So the first step would really be that the founder or the leader of the brand creator, and maybe the founder doesn't have this, so they hire someone to work on this. But first is that first breath of who you want to attract. And there's some things, like it's very impressive that Skims has a regular guy brand that is also expensive. Because tradition will tell you that if you speak to everyone, she makes clothes for everyone. That's part of their thing. You see all different colors and skin tones in their clothing colors and in their ad campaigns. Typically, the regular guy brand is low cost. So if you're talking about this is for everybody, usually you're going to have a lower cost product and also lower profit margins, typically. But not always, because you can marry that with kind of a polar or a thing that makes it special. So what they've done is they've married the regular guy with the ruler, and the ruler is really Kim Kardashian. It's her vision. It's her detail orientation, her we're going to run stuff attitude, her wear 3 layers of shapewear so that you can look like a queen. So that's how they mixed the everybody, which may have a lower cost, lower profit margins, and is the customer-led portion, with Kim Kardashian's vision as a ruler brand. And they married them two together so they could have an increased cost and a stronger brand differentiation in the market.
Kudos to Kim.
Yeah, for real.
Awesome.
And to her team.
For sure. I never heard about them. They're not famous from where I come from, but I'm going to look. I knew that she has a brand, but I never looked in the website. But after this,
I just have to be honest with you. I like to try international trends just because I'm in the field. And so I ordered from them just to see what it was like. And fell completely in love with their clothes. Wow. They're so comfortable. She nailed it. She nailed it.
Are they cozy? Are they cozy as well?
They're so cozy. They delivered. If you don't deliver, if the product is called a cozy loungewear, and when I put it on, I'm like, I'm going to change into my other thing, then you lose the customer.
Yeah, for sure. But
if you deliver, then every time I think of cozy loungewear, I'm going to choose that.
Awesome. Wow, a lot of stuff to digest and think about. I'm feeling as if I need to write an email to my copywriters and tell them to change everything in the websites. So thank you for that.
Yes, of course. I'm just here to give copywriters work.
So thank you so much. Where can people read more about you, contact you guys for help?
Yeah, for sure. So people love our Instagram. Please follow us on Instagram. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram. We take great pride in our Instagram content and like to use it as an example of how to write in archetypes that gets results. So find us on Instagram. That's at Vox Verba, VoxVerba. You can also find us on VoxVerba.com. Every single month, we do a free live training where we teach people how to use their customer's voice in copywriting on their site. We walk through a report and exactly how you can update assets, and people love it. So anyone can sign up for that at VoxVerba.com. And then just for you guys, I made a special code so all of your people can get 20% off. That code is EcomXF20, and they get 20% off when you use that code. So that'll work on our Voice of Customer Copywriting Guide. That product takes customer reviews and gives you back your customer voice. It also works on our founder interview and insights guide that costs $500. It includes a facilitated interview where you get your founder's voice. And then that also works on one of our entry products called the Strengths Copy Guide. It's a smaller kind of just an introduction for people that might not have a lot of content to work with. It's only $35. And it gives people what are your best strengths and how can you use them in your copywriting. So that works on all of them. And then for fun, if you just really have a lot of curiosity about what is this branding stuff, what's archetypes, and you just want to kind of step your toes into it, you can go to voxverba.com. Kind of halfway through the site, there is a celebrity quiz. It's super fast. All you do is pick the celebrity that you think vibes or connects with your brand the most, and it'll tell you what archetype matches that celebrity. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. I want to do this as well. I'll go ahead and fill the quiz.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. And thank you for sharing the promo code. I'm going to write it down in the show notes. And it's been a pleasure. A lot of stuff to digest, as I mentioned. I'm looking forward maybe to our next call and hear
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a wonderful conversation. So much fun. Really dove deep into some stuff. And I hope that as people apply these things, they see some big changes in their business so that they can hire more people, have a happier life, and really just do better in the world.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, man.